How can a game that's still in early access and isn't even fully complete need to be saved? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Before we get started, I want to thank the Overseer 91, Grey Knight, and all my other channel members who help make videos like this possible. Let's get started. So how can a game that's still in early access need to be saved? The reason for that is the biggest point of early access is to get player feedback and community feedback on both changes that have been made to the game and updates, as well as suggestions for future updates. And one of the issues right now that Grounded seems to be having is player retention. And while that's not a major issue, specifically because it's not a live service game, so the game's not dependent upon having a certain amount of players playing every month, it is going to be detrimental in the long term because not having as many players providing feedback and not having as many players playing the public test servers and stuff like that in the future is just going to make the development a little bit rougher. It's going to lead to a more likely chance that there's going to be bugs that don't get found, or that there's going to be, no pun intended, or that there's going to be features that are added or not added that would make the game better or make the game less enjoyable. So we need to figure out ways of getting players to stick around. And one of the things that I've done in the past is look at the statistics for players. We're not going to go through all those again, but looking at the trends for the game in every single metric, both from my own personal experience as well as looking at every public metric that I can find, the interest in the game seems to be waning the longer we go before early access is finished. And the reason for that, I think, is twofold. One, I think it's because the game is just not going to be able to retain players based on its current gameplay loop. And two, it's because the updates now are happening less frequently and because they also have less content in them. For example, the last update, the Into the Wood update, only provided about a day or two's worth of content if you just wanted to get through the bulk of the content. I'm not saying you could max out every weapon or get everything maxed out in that one short amount of time. However, you could complete all the new content, all the new area of the yard in 3 to 5 hours without really doing any kind of research. If you watched a couple of videos on what to do, you probably could have knocked it out, especially if you had been prepared in about an hour. And I think the issue right now is the game is not retaining players. So after you complete that content, what is there left to do? Well, at this point, the only thing there's really left to do in the game to be productive, other than building for your own personal enjoyment, would be to just go around and hunt scarabs so that you can max out all the weapons. Now, this ends up repeating the cycle. So what ends up happening is if you've been doing that and leading up to this next update, which may or may not be at the end of April, it may be in May. I'm expecting it to be at the end of April, early May at the latest. If you've been playing nonstop since the last update, you're going to end up having everything ready to go for that update, which means that you're going to blow through that update just as quickly. So if you have multiple weapons maxed out at level 9, if you have all the gear farmed up, if you have parts from every single bug in the game, every single resource in the game stacked up in your chest, you're just going to be ready to go and hit the ground running when the next update comes out, which means you're going to blow through it probably in a day or so because they've already said that next update is going to be similar to the last update in terms of content. And what that ends up leading to is either player burnout or people are just getting bored because there's really not much to do. And like I said, if the only thing to do in the game right now is just to hunt scarabs, that is fun to do, but you can only do that for so long before you get bored of it. And as of right now, there's just no reason to keep building. I think at this point, if anybody's been playing the game for more than maybe like 20 hours or so, you've probably built yourself a couple of bases. You have your stuff set up where you want it. Maybe you're building some stuff just for fun, but beyond that, there's just not anything else to do. So the one thing I think that can be the savior of the game in terms of keeping players' attention, and it has been mentioned, it should be hopefully coming in this next update, is base raids. I think base raids are the one thing that they can add right now that would keep players around, give people a reason to keep playing in between updates, and just keep people interested in the game even after they finish the new content. As an example, if there were base raids after the last update, maybe you completed the Termite Hill, you got all the new stuff up here, got all the new gear, and now you're just waiting for the next update. If there were base raids, you would be able to just sit there and defend your base, figure out different ways of fighting off the different bugs, perhaps figuring out ways of triggering certain raids, stuff like that. I don't know how it's going to work. They haven't given us really much information on it. But I do think that is the one feature right now that can definitely help the longevity of this game. And if not that, there needs to definitely be something else, because I know there's kind of a split based on both my polling and me just asking people, which is, are you interested in base raids? Would you like to see them? It seemed like more than half of people were definitely interested in them, but it seems also like most people are definitely wanting them to be optional or not having effect on their current progress. As an example, if you spent 20 or 30 hours building a house and then it gets destroyed in 15 seconds by a base raid, I can't imagine that being fun. So their developers are going to have a tough time, or they're going to have to figure out, hopefully working with the community, on how to implement the base raids and make them where those that want them can enjoy them and those that don't want them don't have to deal with them without actually completely changing the game As an example, maybe the base raids are optional. Maybe you only have to deal with them a little bit. Maybe you can turn them on or off. I'm not sure how they're going to work with that. And if base raids aren't the solution, there's going to have to be something else. I'm not exactly sure what that could be, because honestly, right now, in survival games, other than trying to survive as long as you can, if they're story driven, it's basically just finish the story and then that's it. And that's perfectly fine if that's the direction this game's going. I kind of feel like it is. But in the meantime, between now and the end of early access, I really think they need to come up with a way of keeping players interested between updates, because I can personally speak for myself. I haven't played the game as I'm recording this in about a month, other than recording videos. And even my videos have definitely, if you probably noticed, I've been putting out fewer and fewer videos, because at this point I've pretty much covered everything at least once, some things twice. And there's nothing else for me to do right now other than basically go back and rehash old content. And my only concern with that, I'm definitely going to do that in the future at some point, because obviously some things are outdated. My concern right now is if I go do it right now and then the next update comes out and completely breaks something, then it's made irrelevant again. So I'm just trying to figure out when I'm going to go back and cover older things so that I can provide the most value and give everybody the most up-to-date information. But in between now and then, I just don't know what I'm going to be doing. I've been playing other games. I'm sure others have been playing other games as well, which is perfectly fine. But just recording this video right now, walking around, I definitely miss this game and I want to play it again, but I can't just sit here and force myself to play it. So what I'm basically getting to is I just hope the base raids are the savior for the game. I hope they do them well. Hopefully they add more traps to the game. I'm kind of hoping that they add ways to trigger certain raids. And as an example, I'm just going to give a couple examples of how I think these could work. And you can let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. One that I was definitely thinking about was something to do with this beehive. So that beehive, honestly, is kind of tiny considering look how many bees are over there. So I'm not sure if there's plans for that beehive to actually be increased in size. But I think what would be amazing would be, even if they leave it as it is now, imagine if going inside of there and taking the nectar from the bees would trigger them to come try to find it and attack your base. So let's say I would go over there, take the nectar, take it back to my base, whatever my home base is. I guess I'd have to have a way of determining which base is going to get attacked, because I know a lot of people have probably 10 bases scattered around the map, maybe fewer, maybe more. I know lots of people like to build a lot. So I basically usually have one main hub in the center, and then I build some smaller ones on the outskirts. But getting attacked on a random base would probably just not make sense. So imagine I take that nectar out. Let's say this is my main base. I take the nectar out, bring it back here. This main base has something in it, whether it's where my spawn point's set, or maybe there's just a flag you put down as this is my home base that's going to be defended. And imagine that night, maybe Burgle sends me the message, because they did mention that you're going to be able to communicate with Burgle remotely without having to go to the lab. I'm not sure if hopefully that's going to be in the next update as well. So maybe we can turn in quests and stuff like that. Imagine he just sends you a message over your scab scanner or the scab on your wrist, and it says, the bees have become, or something like, my scanners have detected the bees are upset at the fact that you've taken their nectar. Be prepared for a bee attack. And imagine there's a little counter that pops up over your base, and it just starts counting down, and maybe it's like 10 minutes or something, or 10 hours, 6 hours, whatever it's going to be. And it just starts counting down, and you know that your base is going to get attacked because you stole stuff from the beehive. They could do some similar stuff with either the black anthill. Perhaps they could do it with the red anthill. Maybe you go to the larva den and go in there and wipe out the larva. And then when they respawn in, they're angry and they're trying to get retribution against what you've done. They can come over there. So this could provide both extra content, replayable content. It also would provide value in the fact that if there's ways of triggering certain raids, maybe, for example, I want to farm larva parts. Instead of having to keep going over the larva den, I can just trigger that raid that's going to have the larva come over, and then they come to me, and then I can just farm their parts. Same with the bee, same with pretty much any bug in the game. I just think that would be an amazing way of doing this, and having the game be both. It would honestly make the yard feel more. I don't know if it would be realistic, but it would give more life to the yard, because right now, you probably noticed that a lot of the bugs, they just kind of like stay in their own little area. Some of them do wander around, but the interaction between them and you really only happens if you actually go and trigger it, whether you get close to the aggressive bugs or you go up to the neutral bugs and just start attacking them. If going near the beehive, if they just start either chasing you back to your base, or they just decide, I'm going to come back and get my nectar because you did that, or maybe when they add the ant queen, killing the ant queen would just trigger waves of ants that are angry coming to attack and avenge the death of their queen. That would just be an amazing way of adding more content to the game, giving replayability, keeping players around. And I don't know if that's the solution to keeping people playing after full release, because to be completely honest, right now, the way I see this game going, I kind of feel like it's going to be a game like The Forest, or even Subnautica maybe, where you play the game, you can beat the story, and if you want to keep playing, you can keep playing. But I think the most people are probably just going to play the game and then move on to something else, which is perfectly fine. The hardcore people might say, well, let's see how many days I can stay alive without dying. Maybe you play a hardcore mode or something like that. And like the forest, where you can see there's people that play like 100 days or 1,000 days or whatever in the forest. Same thing with 7 Days to Die. See how long you can stay alive when you're getting attacked. So perhaps maybe completing the story will allow you to either say, I'm just going to run around, it's almost like a creative mode, or maybe completing the story, you can trigger those base raids or something like that, just to see how long you can stay alive. So I don't know how well that's going to do for the long term of the game, but hopefully for the short term, doing something like base raids or something similar. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments down below, and definitely make sure you're sharing your suggestions with the developers over on their Discord, because they are supposed to be still looking at those suggestions. We'll see if in the next update, if anything that was the community suggested, it gets added to the game. But I'm looking forward to the base raids. Hopefully you are too. I'm interested to see how they work, and I trust that they'll take our feedback on them, just like they did with the previous update, where they ended up making some balance changes during the public test server in terms of the combat and stuff like that. So anyway, those are my thoughts on how to keep grounded, or how to keep players around, how to save the game from just slowly fading off into obscurity, because the last thing I want to see is this great game just kind of fizzle out when it hits the finish line, and just have not get the number of players playing it. Even though 10 million people have played it up to this point, how many? They're obviously not all still playing it. In fact, very few of them are still playing it. If you look at the numbers, there's only on Steam anywhere from like 2,000 to 3,000 people playing it at any given time, usually less. It's never in the top 50 on Xbox most game played, even though it's on Game Pass. So hopefully when it releases, it'll bring in a brand new audience, bring in lots of players, and maybe they'll stick around if they're given a reason to. Anyway, those are my thoughts on how we can save grounded, how we can keep the game, make the game more replayable, and keep people around longer. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you found this video interesting, make sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing for more videos just like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.